is Pulse of Africa, the face and voice of Africa. The story of resurgent and burgeoning Africa is here, only on the Pulse of Africa channel. Pulse of Africa, the face and voice of Africa.
Hello and greetings. I'm Edo Masai from Pulse of Africa News. We highlight inspiring stories and key moments that are shaping Africa. Let's begin with Ethiopian Prime Minister's calls on Ethiopians to warmly welcome AU delegates. Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has called on Ethiopians to warmly welcome African leaders and delegates arriving in Addis Ababa for the African Union meetings this week, underscoring Ethiopia's historic role on the continent. In a message addressed to the public, the Prime Minister described Ethiopia as a country long regarded by Africans as a beacon of freedom and a cornerstone of political vision for the continent. He elaborated that the visiting delegations are friends who share the colors of our flag and who we see Ethiopia as a symbol of African unity. Urging citizens to reflect the country's traditions, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed for Ethiopians calls on to demonstrate their renowned hospitality by greeting guests with respect and embracing them with love. The Prime Minister added such gestures honor the spirit of African unity that our flag represents in the shared dreams that connect us all. The 39th Ordinary Session of the Assembly of the African Union will take place from February 14th to February 15th, 2026, following the 48th Ordinary Session of the AU Executive Council scheduled for February 11 and 12. The summit is being held under the theme Assuring Sustainable Water Availability and Safe Sanitation Systems to Achieve the Goals of Agenda 2063. African leaders are expected to deliberate on key continental priorities, including climate resilience, peace and security, and accelerating economic integration through the African Continental Free Trade Area. Africa faces a profound water and sanitation crisis, with over 400 million people lacking access to basic drinking water and more than 700 million without safely managed sanitation. The 2026 AU Theme of the Year emphasizes sustainable water availability and safe sanitation as essential to achieving the AU's Agenda 2063. Fostering economic growth, social development, and climate resilience. Addressing Africa's water and sanitation challenges demands the comprehensive, integrated, and people-centered approach that defines Agenda 2063's philosophy of African ownership and African solutions. The African Union Economic, Social, and Cultural Council organized today pre-summit on the 2026 African Union Theme of the Year, assuring sustainable water availability and safe sanitation systems to achieve the goals of Agenda 2063. At the occasion, Ethiopia's Minister of Water and Energy, Habtamu Ittafa, said the 2026 AU Theme of the Year recognizes water and sanitation are the foundation upon which every aspiration of Agenda 2063 must be built. He warned that inclusive economic growth is impossible when citizens are weakened by waterborne diseases.
How can we achieve inclusive economic growth when our citizens are weakened by waterborne diseases? How can we educate the African we want when girls miss school during menstruation due to lack of sanitation facilities? How can we speak of African dignity when millions are forced to practice open defecation? These are critical questions that we need to ask ourselves today and beyond, and I think for a solution. Our water source sustains lives, powers economies, and binds our nations together for meaningful cooperation and mutual benefits.
He urged that water is essential for life, fuels economic growth, and brings our nations together for collaboration and shared benefits. Yet, issues like climate change, rising populations, inadequate infrastructure, and resource losses pose risks to this cooperation and our collective future. African Union Commissioner of Agriculture, Rural Development, Blue Economy, and Sustainable Environment, Moses Vilakari, said this year's theme is a political and developmental imperative. Water and sanitation are not peripheral concerns. They are central to Africa's sovereignty, resilience, and transformation, he underlined.
The 2026 AU theme of the year, assuring sustainable water availability and safe sanitation systems to achieve the goals of Agenda 2063, is a political and developmental imperative. Water and sanitation are not peripheral concerns. They are central to Africa's sovereignty, its resilience, and transformation. Without water security and safe sanitation, there can be no food security, no rural transformation, no sustainable cities, no viable blue economy, and no climate resilience. So water is really the engine and the key in all of the above.
Louis Sheikh Sissoko, presiding officer of the African Union Economic, Social and Cultural Council, emphasized the critical role of civil society in implementing Africa's water and sanitation agenda. Speaking on the 2026 AU theme of the year, Sissoko noted that while the 2025 African Ministers' adoption of the Africa Water Vision 2063 provides a continental framework for water security and safe sanitation, real progress depends on active community participation and local institution engagement. He highlighted civil society's unique strengths, including its proximity to communities, ability to mobilize citizens, and credibility as advocates for inclusive development.
Addressing water and sanitation is central to achieving the aspiration of Agenda 2063. Reliable and safe water systems are essential to climate adaptation, agricultural productivity, industrial growth, and social stability. By placing civil society at the heart of this discussion, we increase the likelihood that solutions will be inclusive, context-specific, and sustainable.
He called on civil society to lead efforts in translating continental strategies into tangible improvements in water access and sanitation for communities across Africa.
The African Union has selected assuring sustainable water availability and safe sanitation systems to achieve the goals of Agenda 2063 as the theme of the year for 2026. This focus highlights innovative approaches to improving access to clean water and sanitation, supporting health, agriculture, energy, and climate resilience across the continent. Significant advancements include expanded infrastructure projects, regional cooperation on shared water resources, and commitments to resilient solutions amid environmental pressures. Agenda 2063 is Africa's vision for the future, and it is already in motion. Trade is expanding, infrastructure is connecting, and integration is accelerating. African leaders will meet on February 14 to 15 to drive this vision forward. And Pulse of Africa has the story. Cleaner cities are creating healthier, safer, and more livable communities in Ethiopia. Every small change makes a big difference.
In other news, the United States and Burundi have signed a 5-year health cooperation memorandum of understanding aimed at strengthening the fight against HIV/AIDS and malaria while boosting global health security. The agreement supports efforts to improve Burundi's ability to prevent, detect, and respond to infectious disease threats before they spread beyond its borders. Under the MOU, the United States plans to invest more than $129 million over the next 5 years to support Burundi's health priorities, including disease surveillance, outbreak preparedness, and response systems. In turn, the government of Burundi has committed to increasing its domestic health expenditure by $26 million during the same period, with the goal of strengthening its national health system and promoting long-term self-reliance. The agreement builds on decades of cooperation and aims to sustain HIV treatment coverage while significantly reducing malaria-related deaths, especially among children under the age of 5. Kenya and Italy have agreed to deepen their bilateral relations following high-level talks at State House, Nairobi, between President William Ruto and Italy's Minister for Universities and Research, Anna Maria Bernini. The meeting culminated in the signing of Memorandum of Understanding on Higher Education, Training and Research. The agreement aims to boost cooperation through joint programs and initiatives that will support the exchange of researchers, faculty members, and students, promote joint research projects, and enable the shared use of scientific and technological infrastructure. Both sides committed to expanding collaboration between universities in the two countries, enhancing the mobility of students and teaching staff, and equipping a significant number of Kenya's technical and vocational education and training institutions. Kenya and Italy also agreed to strengthen knowledge transfer in emerging fields, particularly artificial intelligence, to support innovation, skills development, and sustainable growth. The new partnership underscores the growing ties between Kenya and Italy in education, research, and innovation. In our business news, Zambian President Hakainde Hichilema said the country has recorded strong progress in reforming its mining sector, citing rising investments and increased copper production since the government outlined its vision at the 2022 Mining Indaba. Speaking at the 2026 Mining Indaba, the president said Zambia inherited a mining sector facing significant challenges, but has since implemented reforms that have attracted more than $12 billion in new investments. Major mining operations, including Kinsanshi, Lumwana, Mopani, and Konkola copper mines, have returned to stable operations. According to the president, copper production increased by 12% in 2024 and a further 8% in 2025, reflecting growing confidence in the sector and improved operational performance. Hence, the reform is bearing fruits, he added.
Our reforms are anchored in stability, confidence building, given the conditions that we inherited when we took public office. Obviously, loss of confidence, conflicts all over, as you heard from the minister, even in the mining sector, and support businesses. Conflict, litigation, all of that stuff. So our job was to begin to build stability, confidence that we can do things together and achieve sustainable growth. We inherited, as the minister said, a declining economy, growing at minus 2.8% GDP. Not long ago, just 4 years ago. Now we are 4.5 years thereabout in Carpent. And therefore, we launched what we called disciplined reforms. Clarity, discipline of execution, consistency. Very important. Now, these reforms are bearing fruit.
He said the government is targeting copper output of 3 million tons within the next decade, supported by expanded geological surveys, new exploration areas, and increased interest from international investors. Efforts are also underway to strengthen infrastructure and institutions to sustain long-term growth. President Hichilema emphasized that growth in the mining sector will translate into more jobs, increased revenue for social services such as schools and clinics, and greater opportunities for local businesses. He reaffirmed that Zambia remains open, stable, and committed to completing its reform agenda. Uganda's central bank maintained its key lending rate at 9.75%, citing rising inflationary pressure and high oil prices amid sustained geopolitical uncertainty. Uganda's headline inflation rate rose to 3.2% in January from 3.1% in December, driven by higher prices in energy and services. Bank of Uganda Governor Michael Antingi Ego told reporters that although the inflation rate remains below the central bank's medium-term target of 5%, but geopolitical tensions and trade barriers pose risks to the inflation outlook for Africa's top coffee exporter and an upcoming oil producer. Risks to inflation outlook remain elevated, mainly due to heightened geopolitical tensions that could disrupt global supply chains, he said. The central bank rate has been at 9.75% since October 2024. Next up, sport news. The African Union has highlighted Africa's growing presence at the 2026 Winter Olympics in Milan Cortina, as 15 athletes from 8 African countries take part in the global sporting event. This marks a notable increase compared to the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics, where only 6 athletes from 5 African nations competed. African athletes are set to compete in a range of disciplines, including alpine skiing, cross-country skiing, freestyle skiing, and skeleton, reflecting the continent's expanding footprint across diverse winter sports. The African Union congratulated all participating athletes, underscoring the role of sport as a powerful tool for diplomacy that helps build bridges, shape perceptions, and unite nations beyond borders. Preparations for the Dakar 2026 Youth Olympic Games have entered the delivery phase, with steady progress being made in venue construction and operational readiness during the Games year. Updates on preparations were presented recently at an International Olympic Committee session, with overall progress described as positive. Organizers noted that timelines remain tight, with the next coordination meeting scheduled for the end of March, which will be a key moment to review how far preparations have advanced. Scheduled to take place from October 31st to November 13, the Dakar 2026 Youth Olympic Games will be the first Olympic sports event held on African soil. The Games will bring together around 2,700 athletes aged up to 17, competing across 3 host zones: Dakar, Diamandiano, and Sali. The Olympic flame is expected to arrive on the African continent in September. By the end of September, organizers aim to deliver an event that reflects Senegal's development in sports infrastructure as well as the broader vision of the Olympic movements. Preparations related to services such as arrivals and departures, visas, accommodation, catering and security are also advancing in close coordination with relevant authorities. Organizers say all systems are being put in place to ensure full readiness and to welcome the world to experience the Youth Olympic Games on African soil for the first time. That's for the hour. Thank you for tuning in. Goodbye.